Welcome, everybody. And this is Peter Nilsson, head of school at King's Academy. I'm here today with Jawad al Rosan from Zain. Jawad is from the technical department at Zain, where he is the project management office and governance manager, and works with some of the data analytics that is produced by Zain. Zain is the largest telecom operator and provider here in Jordan. And what Jawad has for us today is some really interesting observations that comes from the data that is generated by our mobile devices. Observations about how people's behavior is changing here in Jordan, how people's behavior, not only physical behavior, but how people's behavior online is changing. So without further ado, welcome, Jawad. It's really wonderful to have you here, and I'm grateful for the time that you spent preparing what you have for us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate giving us this opportunity, and hopefully we'll give some useful information, some interesting information that shows the insights we have at our network, and it reflects on the behavior of people during the quarantine and due to COVID-19 even as well.
Thank you so much, Jawad. And as I recall, it all starts with the difference between voice and data. What are some of the ways in which you can extract useful information from this?
Just to simplify, we have the records related to voice calls, where we'll have calling and call, duration of the call, whether it's answered or not, the location at which this call is generated. The same applies for the data. Every time you access a website, a service such as YouTube or Facebook, all these are captured. Now, this is in a way your raw data, and it contains the location, the timestamp, at what time you made this call, whether it's a voice or a data, and what kind of data you access.
So location data tells you where people are moving, and the time data tells you when they're moving to different places. And the data that comes from, well, the data itself, that tells you the kinds of digital activities that people are doing also.
Yes, correct.
Share a little bit about what you've seen in the patterns that have emerged. What kind of behaviors, location-based behaviors, have you seen that seems to be a result of the COVID-19 situation?
What we have seen from our statistics, that when we compare the locations of our subscribers before the quarantine, okay, there was a ratio of people who moved to their working location not related to their home locations. After the quarantine, we've seen an increase of 30% on the ratio of subscribers staying at the same location, their home location, versus, or let's say, an interval of the noon versus the night. So it shows that people are staying at home. We have seen a drop of traffic on serving cells that are in commercial places like malls, even for the universities as well. You'll see a big drop on traffic. We have dedicated cells. These are commercial locations where you are serving, where you see a high number of users coming in. We've seen a drop of traffic. The reason is these locations are closed as well. What we've seen as well, there's a certain ratio of people who live outside Amman and work in Amman. So we've seen a drop on the ratio of subscribers during the day mainly who are in Amman. Also, we've seen an increase in usage in governorates versus Amman. The major usage is in Amman. But this is some of the insights we've seen based on our insights, whether at subscriber level or as a cell level or element level, to show that the behavior of subscribers.
So these are the quantifiable outcomes of the social physical distancing that we're seeing happening around the world. Here, both through the data generated by Zain and by Google, and presumably by other operators as well, this really puts numbers to the changes in physical movements that people are demonstrating. It's fascinating what you described there at the bottom, the shift here in Jordan from Amman to the governorates, where there are many people who live in the governorates but work in Amman, and what this shows is that the data that's moving across your network is higher in the governorates than it used to be, because many of the people who do work in Amman are now decentralized around the country. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about the different kinds of data usage as opposed to physical movement.
A quick slide showing the comparison between a week before the quarantine and the weeks after quarantine. We've taken week 9 versus week 14 to show the big shift in usage in terms of peak interval as well as during the whole day. What we've seen after the quarantine, there is an increase of 20% on the peak traffic and 40% on the total usage, because you see an increase across the whole day.
So in the line that we see here, we have these 7 different days, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we have the time of the day and the numbers above that. The blue line is the week 9 of the year 2020, before the quarantine, and that showed a peak usage or peak throughput at around 8 o'clock or 2000 hours. And the orange line is week 12, so is 3 weeks later after the quarantine. And we're seeing, as you're suggesting, both a higher peak from the peak of the blue to the peak of the orange, meaning at the peak time of day, the usage is 20% higher at that time of day than it was before. And the whole area under the curve, which is the total daily usage, has increased by 40%. Wow, 40% greater usage over the course of a day than before. I guess this is a result of how much time people are spending connected to their devices or on their computers.
Totally, they're using more data. The peak increased 20%. However, the whole day usage is increasing significantly, which is 40%.
And where are they using it? What kinds of sites? Where are you seeing these changes? What are some examples?
Still, definitely the majority of traffic, it's on YouTube and Facebook video. These are because the type of the service, it consumes a high volume as a type of, and most of the people are accessing these services. However, what we've seen after the start of the quarantine, we've seen an interesting shift in the usage of applications. As we've mentioned, the majority is YouTube and Facebook video. These are streaming services. Then you have WhatsApp consumption, you have Instagram. But what we've seen, and it shows the behavior of the users, we've started seeing new applications such as Zoom and House Party, and these are related either to work or socializing. And for example, in Zoom and Skype, a huge increase. And
so
you can see that
Zoom is the gray bar and Skype is the orange bar, and
correct.
You can hardly even see the gray bar leading up to let's say the middle of March, but then it grows a little bit. But Skype as a conferencing or video chat tool really spikes. But to what do you attribute the dips that happen periodically in those graphs?
I'll show it in this slide and the other slide. It shows that Skype and Zoom are being used as a way of online working or online meeting, because at weekends you'll see a dip. So usually people are using these applications for work-related meetings. House Party, it shows that it's a continuous, so it's used more for socializing. This is where the world is moving. You need to utilize this mass data to build logic, to build analysis, and to enhance your decision taking. And this is part of the data science now people are concentrating on, and think this is one of the major streams in the future for people to consider in their work, and for students as well.
Let's dig a little further into some of what you have here.
Okay, for now, one of the things we've observed now, the upper graph, it shows the voice traffic, our voice network traffic, and below is one of the local channels carried over data. It's a streaming service for Ru'ya, not the one broadcasted over the. Now, what we've witnessed now, one of the aspects we've noticed that there's a dip in voice usage at 8 p.m. every day. And when we took Ru'ya TV usage as well, we've seen a huge increase at 8. And based on our understanding, it's the time at which Jordan officially announces through the Minister of Health the number of new infected people. So it shows the way people are tracking the new cases, because they're anxious to see how we're progressing in terms of COVID-19, and it shows how the behavior of people are, everyone is accessing Ru'ya at 8 and other channels at which other local channels. However, it shows the behavior that people are anxious to see the updates, they're following up, and it's reflected on our network in terms of the behavior of usage. And this is one of the insights which we see in our network.
Fascinating. I imagine you could spend hours or days or weeks just looking through the data to derive new understandings of how people behave over the course of the day and how those behaviors have changed as a result of COVID-19.
Definitely, whether it's for COVID-19 or other aspects as well. As we mentioned earlier, we have vast information, huge amounts of information we can extract, we can build analysis on. And this is just the COVID-19, it's a way to reflect how networks can provide such insights.
Jawad, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the care and thoughtfulness that you've put into this information and the presentation that you've put together. I know that the people watching are grateful to be able to learn from these insights and to see how behavior has changed here, not just here in Jordan, but presumably in similar ways around the world.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunities, and you're always welcome. You and everyone are welcome if they need anything. We're glad to provide any support, any further insights as well.